You're wasting my time. Move aside now. You don't belong at this counter. Get out before I call security, understand?
Cold white showroom lights skim chrome hoods as a handheld camera slices down the aisle. A plainly dressed black CEO pauses at a silver coupe. A sales manager steps into his space, palm to his chest, finger poised inches from his face. Phones lift. A radio crackles. The card reader beeps. Push in on the finger. Whip pan to his steady eyes. Breath tight. Space smaller. VO antagonist. Sharp. Wait outside. Now? Title hit. Car dealer staff tell undercover black CEO to wait outside. Cold white showroom light skims across chrome and glass. The camera glides through the entrance. The soft hiss of the automatic doors fading into the even breath of air conditioning and the distant beep of a card reader. Polished floors mirror the undercarriage of luxury sedans. Sales chatter hums in pockets, then thins as the lens finds a man in a weathered jacket who moves with unhurried purpose. He pauses beside a silver coupe and rests a hand on the fender as if testing the cool of the metal. This is a black CEO traveling quiet, without entourage, without signal, watching the room watch him. The shot drifts closer. On the surface of the hood, light breaks into white ribbons. Reflections fold his silhouette into the curve of the car. He studies the spec tag. Twin turbo. Leather in a soft grey. A test drive would decide it. He turns and raises a hand to catch the eye of a nearby associate who is laughing with another customer about delivery times. The associate glances over the shoulder of the CEO, then steps away to pour bottled water for someone else. A new presence enters frame from the right. The sales manager in a pale blue blouse, tablet under one arm, steps into his path with a practiced smile that does not reach her eyes. Her shoes whisper over the floor. She stops close enough that the scent of floor cleaner and faint perfume meet in the air between them. The CEO greets her with a steady voice and asks to schedule a test drive for the model he is touching. She holds her smile in place for a beat, scans his jacket and the scuffs at the cuff, then lifts her chin. We are at a soft medium close. The camera picks up the click of a pen against her tablet and the distant chatter of a two-way radio. She says appointments are required and that today is very busy. The CEO nods once and replies that he called ahead, that his name should be on the board, and that he is prepared to proceed if they can spare 5 minutes. The pen clicks again. The manager does not check the board. She angles her body, sets an open palm lightly against his chest to halt his step, and points toward the glass doors. Wait outside, please. We will call you if anything opens up. A pause follows. The showroom noise seems to step back. In the reflection of the coupe, the manager's finger is now a small spear of light hung inches from his face. The camera creeps forward. The CEO does not move. He keeps his hands visible at his sides and fixes his gaze at the space just above her shoulder. Phone screens rise in the background. Someone whispers near the finance desk. The radio crackles again with a single clipped word. Security. The manager repeats herself with a harder edge. Outside. Now. She tells him they have serious buyers waiting and that he is holding up the lane. Her hand presses into the fabric of his jacket and then lifts away in a jitter from nerves. The CEO draws a slow breath. He asks her name. She gives it quickly and adds that policy is policy. He asks to see the senior person responsible for the store. Her smile drops. She calls for assistance without breaking eye contact. Cut to a tight frame of the card reader light on the nearby counter as it blinks in a patient rhythm. Cut back to the two faces. The CEO reaches into his inner pocket and removes a slim metal card holder. He does not hand it over. He lets it rest between forefinger and thumb where the light can catch the etched letters. He states again that he would like a test drive or a conversation with the person who can authorize one. He keeps his tone even, a neutral register that reads as control rather than heat. The manager looks down at the metal, then up at his eyes, then at the phones now pointed in their direction. She says the waiting area is outside, and gestures toward the doors a second time, this time using the finger that had hovered before. The gesture is sharp, almost a jab into the air. The camera rides that motion with a quick push in, stops at the space between fingertip and face, and holds there. We hear the soft thud of security shoes somewhere behind the lens. We hear a customer cough and swallow as if the room's temperature has shifted. The CEO breaks the silence with a short line that lands without volume and without threat. He asks again for the person in charge. The manager says that person is unavailable. Her voice tightens. He asks if she would like to glance at the name on the card. A beat. She does not look. She asks him to step outside one more time. The handheld image quivers a little, as if the room were breathing with them. Phones keep recording. The finance clerk peeks over a partition. A service door opens and closes. The CEO stays still, eyes steady, shoulders square, both hands visible, patience intact, but almost taut enough to ring. The moment holds, stretched and thin. Then he speaks, not louder, simply clearer. He says he will wait exactly where he is until the person responsible arrives. He suggests she call them now. The radio pops once more. The camera lingers on the card holder as he turns it in his fingers. The name unreadable yet present like a key pressed into a pocket lining, waiting to be used. Air conditioning hums in a steady line, while conversation pockets thin around the silver coupe. Part 2 opens with the manager signaling a nearby associate with a quick tilt of her chin. The associate understands without words and drifts behind the CEO as if to herd him toward the glass doors. A second employee at the finance counter looks up from a stack of contracts and rests a fingertip on the intercom. The word assistance flickers across the room, half spoken, half radio. The CEO remains where he is, card holder balanced between forefinger and thumb, its brushed edge catching roof light. He repeats his request in a calm register, not a notch above conversational, asking again for the person responsible for the store. The manager answers that the general manager is in a meeting and cannot be disturbed. She adds that company policy requires an appointment for any test drive over a certain price threshold, and that the waiting area sits outside beyond the automatic doors. Her smile shows more teeth than warmth. The phones pointed at them capture it all. A guard enters the frame at a diagonal, shoes quiet on epoxy, hand near a clipped radio. He stops at a respectful distance, reading the scene before he speaks. The camera finds the guard's eyes flitting from the manager to the CEO to the cardholder and back again. He asks in a low voice whether everything is fine. The manager answers quickly that it is. Then she tells the CEO that failing to comply will leave them no choice but to escort him out. The guard does not move. He waits. The CEO shifts his grip on the cardholder and offers the manager a simple fix. "Confirm my appointment on the board," he says. "Check the call log. Or let me speak with the person who can. It will take less time than this conversation." The manager does not turn. She rests the tablet against her hip and taps the glass with a capped pen, a nervous metronome that the microphones pick up. The pen taps again, a third time. Her gaze slides to the jacket he wears, to the scuffed cuff, to the shoes chosen for walking rather than posing. She returns to the script. "Outside, please. We will call if needed." A customer near the showroom entrance whispers that he recognizes the company name engraved on the metal. Another lifts a phone higher. The finance clerk leans into the intercom and murmurs that there might be a problem. The guard's radio crackles once and stills. The CEO thanks the manager for her time and clarifies his intention. He will remain in place, out of the main aisle, without raising his voice, until the person responsible arrives. He suggests calling now. He says the situation is fixable in minutes. The manager nods as if she agrees, then does not move to a phone. She turns to the guard and asks him to escort the gentleman outside to wait. The guard takes a half step and stops. "Sir, would you be comfortable waiting by the door?" he asks. The CEO replies that he will be comfortable remaining here. He gestures to the coupe, to the open floor, to the display that invites shoppers to touch and decide. His tone remains even. He points out the policy poster behind the finance desk describing equal treatment for all customers. The lens drifts across that poster, white text on blue, then back to the standstill at the coupe. It is the manager who blinks first. She reaches for the desk phone and dials an inside line with an impatient jab. No one answers. She tries a second number and announces in a voice that carries that the general manager is needed on the floor. Silence. She hangs up too hard and the handset thuds against plastic. The guard clears his throat and offers to check the office. She declines and says she will handle it. She faces the CEO again and repeats her direction a third time, this time with the word now clipped into two hard beats. "Outside, now." The CEO finally lifts the cardholder to chest level, where the camera can read it, even if the manager refuses. A few letters become clear before the angle shifts. He does not boast. He does not explain. He simply repeats the request to see the person in charge and adds a detail. If that person is not available in the next minute, he will place a call of his own. He says the call will be brief. He states this the way one reads a clock. Across the room, the finance clerk decides to move. She steps from behind the counter and crosses toward the glass office at the back. The manager sees her and calls her back. The clerk hesitates, mouth open, then keeps walking. The guard watches, undecided. Phones continue to record. A child touches a chrome grill and leaves a fog halo where breath meets metal. Somewhere a receipt printer chirps and feeds a pale strip of paper that curls like a ribbon. The manager tries one last angle. She frames the issue as a disruption, as lane blockage, as risk. The CEO listens without interruption. When she finishes, he says a single sentence. "Please bring me the person who can decide, or I will bring them into the room myself." He sets the cardholder on the nearest counter and places his phone beside it. The camera settles on these two objects, like pieces on a board. The cut lingers a final beat. Then the finance clerk opens the glass door to the back office and vanishes inside. The hinge sighs shut. The room holds its breath for what comes next. The glass office fogs a faint oval where the finance clerk's breath meets the pane before she slips inside. From the showroom, we only see silhouettes for a moment, shoulders and hands moving in brief, sharp gestures. The manager remains by the silver coupe, tablet hugged to her ribs, watching the office door as if eye contact alone could pull the general manager out by thread. The guard angles himself to keep the lane clear but does not press forward. The cardholder and phone sit on the counter like calm anchors in a room drifting toward a front. Across chrome and paint, the CEO adjusts nothing. He does not fill silence with apologies. He tracks the clerk's progress through the frosted lines of the office window and listens to the showroom's small sounds. The air conditioner breathes and rattles at a vent seam. A child's sneaker squeaks and then goes still. Somewhere, the receipt printer finishes and cuts with a dry click. In that mix, a new tone arrives, one desk phone, far back, ringing a single long chime that does not repeat. It stops, and a chair leg scrapes. The silhouettes shift again. The manager chooses motion over patience. She steps close enough that fabric grazes fabric and says she will escort the gentleman to a more appropriate waiting area, each word shaped for the phones around them. She places her palm to his chest again. He does not flinch, but his eyes shift to the contact point, then back to hers. He asks, evenly, if she believes touching a customer aligns with the policy printed 6 steps away. She drops her hand as if the question were heated metal and produces a smile with edges. She replies that she is maintaining order. He answers that order is best served by speaking with the person who can decide. A hinge sighs. The clerk reappears, alone, closing the office door behind her with care. Her eyes avoid the cluster and land on the cardholder. She gives a small nod the manager does not catch, then says the general manager is on a regional call and will need a minute. The manager exhales through her nose, turns to the CEO, and repeats the directive to wait outside. The word outside arrives sharper than the rest. The guard winces almost imperceptibly. The CEO offers one last courtesy. He lifts his phone, taps the side button, and waits for the lock screen to bloom. His thumb hovers but does not press. He says he will place a call that could conclude the issue cleanly if the general manager is truly unavailable. The manager watches the phone rather than his face. Her chin lifts. She says threats will not accelerate service. He says this is not a threat. It is a cure for delay. The phones around them shift, lenses recentering, microphones leaning for sound. From the back of the showroom, a slender man in a charcoal suit crosses into view and stops when he takes in the tableau. Manager squared up, guard hovering, clerk stranded, customer still, and centered in negative space. He is not the general manager. The badge at his pocket reads inventory. He asks if anything is wrong. The manager answers that a disruptive customer refuses to exit. The word disruptive stirs a murmur. The clerk inhales to correct it, then hesitates. The inventory lead looks at the CEO, then at the open policy poster, then at the guard who has not laid a hand on anyone. He suggests they verify the appointment board. The manager says the system is down, then flushes when the clerk quietly says it is not. A radio at the guard's shoulder crackles with a voice too soft to pick apart, then clears with 3 clipped syllables, approaching from office. The manager hears it and straightens her blouse as if a spotlight has switched on. She tells the CEO that the general manager will address him briefly and that he should still wait outside for the outcome. He answers that the outcome is often shaped by what people see and hear in the moments before a superior arrives. He gestures lightly, palm open, to the phones, the poster, and the partner logos glinting on a wall of glass as witnesses. Silence returns and spreads in a thin film. The showroom's brightness seems to cool by a degree. The inventory lead drifts backward, uneasy, then stops and plants himself beside the policy poster as if proximity could make him part of it. The clerk steps to the edge of the cluster and folds her hands to keep them from fidgeting. The guard breathes in, holds, lets it out slowly. The manager rubs a thumb along the tablet's edge until it squeaks. The CEO sets his phone back on the counter, face down, and slides the metal card holder on top of it with a soft hush that sounds louder than it is. At last, the glass door opens again. A broad-shouldered man in a navy suit steps out, not hurried but exact, as if he has calibrated his pace to read a room before words land. He looks first at the guard, then the clerk, then the manager. His eyes pause at the card holder and phone. Only then do they meet the CEO's. For a beat longer than politeness requires, the 2 men hold the frame without moving. The general manager asks, calmly, what seems to be the problem? The manager starts to answer. The general manager raises a hand, not to silence, but to sequence. He asks the customer to speak first. The CEO inclines his head, almost a bow you could miss if you blinked. He states his request in 15 quiet words, a test drive as scheduled, or a conversation with whoever can authorize it. He also mentions contact, touching his chest with his own palm for an instant, the way one tests a bruise. The general manager's expression does not change, but his weight shifts slightly to his heels. He asks for the customer's name. The CEO opens the card holder, removes a single card, and sets it on the counter between them. He does not push it forward. He leaves it where light finds the etched letters. The room tightens again as reading happens. Phones tilt, hungry for a glint and a clue. The clerk's eyes widen by a millimeter. The manager does not yet see, but she senses the moment tilting, and her fingers find the tablet's corner and hold on. The general manager reads in silence, mouth settling into a neutral line as the etched name resolves. A fractional nod, almost private, acknowledges recognition. He places 2 fingertips on the card as if confirming texture against memory, then looks up. The manager leans forward, eager to frame the narrative, but the general manager speaks first, asking the clerk to pull up the appointment board and the call log. No one moves for a heartbeat. The clerk jolts into action, hustling to the terminal. The inventory lead edges closer, pretending to study a spec sheet while tracking every word. The general manager turns back to the CEO with a tone that neither flatters nor dismisses. He asks whether this was his first interaction on the floor today. The CEO answers cleanly. He greeted, he asked about a test drive, he was told to wait outside. He keeps his voice even, as if reciting a simple sequence of buttons on a keypad. The manager blurts out that the showroom is saturated, that serious buyers require triage, that an incident was developing. The guard's eyebrow lifts half a millimeter. He still hasn't touched anyone. Phones catch the flicker. From the terminal, the clerk reports that a call booked a test drive under the CEO's initials at the noon slot. The board shows it in green. The call log shows duration and number. The general manager asks her to forward that screen to his inbox and to the compliance folder. The manager tries to cut in with the word misunderstanding. The general manager does not correct her. He simply asks whether she placed her hands on the customer. She hesitates, then says she guided him toward the door. The word guided hangs in air like a thread that won't bear weight. A brief stillness follows, filled by the soft grind of the air conditioner and the bleep of a distant lock engaging at the service bay. The general manager chooses a path. He apologizes to the CEO in a voice that carries just far enough, not loud, but designed to be heard by anyone recording. He states that their standards include equal access to test drives and zero tolerance for contact initiated by staff. He invites the CEO to step to the back office for a moment of privacy. The CEO declines with a courteous shake of the head. "Here is fine," he says. "Transparency helps." The general manager accepts the condition and pivots to his team. He instructs the inventory lead to fetch the keys for the silver coupe. He asks the clerk to print the test drive form and text the code for the insurance verification. He tells the guard to stand down but remain nearby. Then, measured, he turns to the manager. He asks for her account from the beginning, starting with the first time she saw the guest. She starts broad, diffuse, then narrows, then stumbles. The general manager doesn't prod. He lets the timeline expose its own gaps. The pen in her fingers taps, then stops when she remembers it can be heard. The CEO waits, hands visible, phone face down beside the cardholder. When the manager finishes, the general manager nods once. He asks one last question. "Did you at any point instruct this guest to wait outside while his appointment was active?" The manager answers yes, adding the phrase "temporary measure." At the terminal, the printer coughs 2 pages. The clerk tears them clean and crosses back, breathing a little faster than before. She hands the forms to the general manager, who scans them and sets them next to the card on the counter, like items in a row. "All right," he says. "Let's correct the immediate issue. Sir, your test drive begins when you are ready." He looks to the manager and adds, "And we will address the conduct separately." The manager opens her mouth, then closes it. She glances at the phones, at the guard, at the policy poster that has become a mirror she can't get around. The general manager asks the inventory lead for the key fob. A soft chirp answers from the coupe as the lights blink. The showroom inhales. The CEO acknowledges the arrangement with a simple thank you and then introduces a complication of his own. He says he prefers a short call before the drive to ensure that what happened is not treated as an isolated misunderstanding. He lifts his phone, unlocks it, and scrolls to a contact labeled by 3 letters that carry weight in their industry. The general manager watches without blinking and says he understands. He does not ask the CEO to step aside. He does not ask to handle it privately. He says, "Take the call." The CEO hits dial and lifts the phone just enough to keep his voice low but not secret. He explains in 30 seconds what occurred and where. He does not embellish. He names no one except the store. He ends with a request, a same-day review and an on-site training blog scheduled by week's end. He listens, gives a short, affirmative, and ends the call. The room had tried not to listen. The room listened anyway. The general manager exhales once, controlled. "Message received," the general manager says. "We'll begin the review now." He turns to the clerk and asks her to start a report with statements from every staff member who engaged. He tells the inventory lead to cover the manager's desk temporarily. He faces the manager and, with care in each syllable, places her on immediate leave, pending the review. The guard does not move until he is asked to escort her to gather personal items. The manager's lips part, as if a rebuttal could reverse gravity. It doesn't. She steadies herself, nods once, and sets the tablet down with fingers that tremble despite her effort to still them. The general manager returns to the CEO, and for the first time, allows warmth to enter his tone. "Sir, the car is ready. If you prefer another salesperson, I will personally accompany you." The CEO considers, then gestures toward the clerk. "She'll do," he says. The clerk blinks, startled, then nods and collects a clipboard. The phones lower a fraction, sensing a turn. The coupe's door handle presents itself with a smooth extend. The key fob ticks once more. The air changes, not warmer, not cooler, simply less stuck. The coupe acknowledges the key with a soft chirp and a blink from its running lights. The clerk steadies her clipboard against her hip and asks the CEO if he would like water. He declines with a small shake of the head. The general manager stays a step back, visible but not hovering. The guard has shifted to the periphery, radio quiet. The manager, now relieved of duty, moves toward a side corridor with measured steps, the guard shadowing her at a polite distance. Phones drop a few degrees as curiosity gives way to logistics. The clerk presents the test drive form on a hardboard and a pen that writes clean on glossy paper. Insurance code arrives on her phone with a buzz that sounds louder than it is. She reads the digits once, enters them at the terminal, and waits for the green check. Approved. She returns and opens the passenger door for the CEO to inspect the interior first. He runs a hand along the stitch line on the door card, not as praise, more as habit. He reads the spec placard again and nods to proceed. Camera finds the driver's seat lowering a centimeter as memory adjusts to default. The CEO eases in without scraping the sill. He does not slam, he does not perform. He pulls the door in with the base of his fingers and lets it seal on its own latch. The cabin hush is immediate, the showroom dropping to a muffled presence outside the glass. He sets his phone in the wireless tray but does not engage it. The clerk settles in on the passenger side, buckles, and passes the thin fob across the console. It is cool and heavier than it looks. The engine starts on a button press that feels more like a piano key than a switch. Low idle steadies, not loud, a bass line woven under the air of the cabin. The head-up display paints a pale speed number that hovers near the wiper arc. The clerk keeps her voice level and covers the basics. Short route, 2 right turns, a quiet stretch for a pull. She notes the braking will feel over-assisted at low speed and that the steering is quick off-center. She offers to silence the lane tone. He says, "Leave it on." He wants to hear the system as built. Outside the windshield, the general manager steps clear and raises a hand in an ordinary gesture that carries more weight because he is careful not to dramatize it. The clerk confirms mirrors, seat, and climate. The CEO tilts the wheel a notch, clicks the stalk for a single wipe to clear a faint layer of showroom dust, and releases the brake. The car edges forward with a smooth crawl. The camera watches the chrome bars of the showroom grille slide across the glass like a slow shutter. They roll toward the door. The automatic panels part with a breath of warmer air from the street and a different smell entirely, asphalt and faint exhaust. The tires kiss the threshold and find texture. The clerk calls out cross-traffic, and the CEO waits the extra second that signals caution rather than eagerness. He noses into the lane and lets the engine gather without a show. The first turn comes up, and the wheel needs less movement than a less tuned car would demand. He lets that quickness register in his wrist. Back in the showroom, the general manager begins the first practical steps of a review. He asks the inventory lead to log the time of each exchange. He asks the clerk at the terminal to pull security timestamps and preserve them. He calls the regional number he keeps for matters that cannot wait until evening. His voice is even, not defensive. He does not reduce the incident to a single person. He names the failure as a chain and treats it that way. On the street, the coupe clears a line of delivery vans, and the clerk guides the route with small nods. The engine note lifts through the mid-range once, not dramatic, enough to let both of them feel the torque build cleanly. The CEO tests brake modulation with a light roll on and off, no head toss. The steering tracks without the tug that some systems impose. He remarks, almost to himself, that the calibration shows restraint. The clerk allows herself one small smile, because restraint is a word used by people who drive for more than a weekend. They reach the quiet stretch the clerk promised. He gives the car 40% throttle and holds it for 3 beats, then releases and coasts. He watches how the transmission chooses the next ratio, whether it hunts, whether it settles. It settles. The lane tone chirps once and falls silent when he centers the wheel. He tries a slow swerve to feel roll and then returns to straight without correction. He breathes once, slower, and the cabin breathes with him. They loop back toward the showroom. Through the glass wall, the floor looks arranged in new lines. The general manager stands with his shoulders set and his attention on process. The relieved manager is no longer visible. The guard monitors the door, hands away from his belt. Phones have lowered or disappeared into pockets. The policy poster is just a poster again. The coupe noses into its original slot and settles with a last soft brake. The CEO kills the engine and lets the silence arrive. He opens the door, and the showroom's cool returns around him. The clerk thanks him and asks how it felt. He answers with a sum that is not quite technical and not quite simple. Solid, calm, predictable when pushed. She notes the words and they read like a pass. The general manager steps forward, not to rush a signature, but to ask what standard would convince him to continue the conversation. The CEO does not answer yet. He looks at the team configuration, at who moved where, at what changed, and what stayed. He picks up the card holder from the counter, slides the card back into place, and says they will speak about standards first, then, maybe, about cars. The showroom regains its usual rhythm, but it feels arranged differently, as if someone nudged the furniture of the air. The general manager gestures toward a standing-height desk near the policy poster and waits for the clerk to join them with a slim folder. The CEO sets the key fob on the counter, squares the card holder beside it, and speaks first. Standards, he says, begin where assumptions end. Show me your playbook when the floor is crowded, when a customer arrives without signals of status, when staff feel rushed enough to improvise. Not the framed summary on the wall, the real one. The general manager pulls a laminated sheet from the folder and places it next to a printed flowchart the clerk has just brought over. Intake steps, queue logic, appointment verification, de-escalation. Each box is labeled, tidy, unscuffed by use. The CEO scans, not quickly. He traces a route with 2 fingers, then pauses over a decision diamond that reads verify booking before redirect. He asks how often staff bypass the terminal and rely on visual read. The inventory lead opens his mouth and closes it. The general manager answers that in peak hours people cut corners. He says it without excuse, and the admission lands as a hinge turning. The CEO nods once and asks for data, number of walk-ins each Saturday for 3 months, conversion rates by hour, complaints sorted by theme, incidents involving contact initiated by staff. The clerk looks to the terminal, already compiling queries in her head. The general manager does not stall. He tells her to pull what she can now and to mark the rest for end of day. He asks the guard to retrieve the incident footage so their memory will not have to play librarian later. The guard moves, relieved to have a task with clear edges. The discussion shifts to training. Who schedules it? Who teaches it? How often anyone is graded on it rather than just attending with a signature on a line. The CEO describes a cadence that has worked elsewhere. 80-minute blocks on intake triage, equal treatment drills with role switches, a 10-minute debrief where staff speak first, not leadership. He wants anonymous scoring from peers, not just managers, because peers notice shortcuts, managers don't. He does not lecture with heat. He lays out a scaffold with the same tone he used to evaluate steering feel. The general manager takes notes by hand, not to perform humility, but because writing slows him enough to think. He adds his own pieces. A pre-shift huddle where one person retells an instance of good intake under pressure, a rotation that places senior staff at the door during peak hours, a rule that outside cannot be said to anyone with an active booking unless they are a safety risk. The word rule doesn't hang like a threat, it sits like a tool on a bench. Phones still exist, but they hover at the margins now, uncertain of how to frame process. The clerk returns with a preliminary printout. Saturdays show spikes where corners are cut. Complaint keywords cluster around tone, attention, and gatekeeping. One row is circled for contact. The general manager reads, shows the page to the CEO, and does not try to blur it with explanations. He asks what restitution looks like when a store errs. The CEO answers without ornament, acknowledgement in the same space where the error occurred, a direct apology from the highest available person, and a correction you can see, not just a sentence, you can say. He proposes a 3-part fix for the afternoon. First, the general manager addresses the floor within eyesight and earshot, not behind glass, to reaffirm intake standards and the changing coverage. Second, the store posts a brief notice at the entrance that test drives and consultations follow order of booking, not impression. Third, training is scheduled before week's end and its completion is published to staff and region. He adds a fourth that sounds small and turns out large, retire phrases that move people out of sight. Waiting area becomes front lounge. If it rains, a staff member carries umbrellas. It is hard to misread care when someone is physically beside you. The general manager agrees to all 4 without bargaining. He asks the clerk to draft the door notice and print it on the same stock they use for pricing, so it doesn't look like an afterthought. He assigns coverage at the entrance for the next 2 peak segments. He calls the regional contact, puts the phone on speaker, and states the plan in the plainest language he can make. The voice on the line approves and adds compliance support if needed. The manager who was escorted away remains off stage, but her name appears on a form the clerk has begun, and the process for review moves forward, documented rather than dramatic. The CEO studies the faces in front of him. He notes where people stand, where they look when they are not being addressed, whether their shoulders rise at the word training or settle at the word fixable. He picks up the card holder and returns it to his inner pocket. He thanks the clerk for the route and the candor. He thanks the general manager for prioritizing the response over the optics. He does not promise a purchase to reward the scramble. He says he will stay for 10 more minutes to watch the new intake coverage run once. If it runs clean, they can talk numbers. If it stumbles, they can talk again about why. The general manager nods with something like relief, and the floor, rearranged by scrutiny, begins its first test under a different lens. The door notice goes up in a clear frame at eye level, printed on the same heavy stock as pricing. The inventory lead takes the first shift at the entrance with a tablet signed into the booking queue. He greets a couple in work polos who arrive with a stroller and a question about monthly payments. He checks the queue first, then their names, and invites them to the front lounge rather than gesturing outside. The clerk hovers near enough to backstop, but not to crowd. The general manager keeps his distance to let the coverage breathe. The CEO stands to the side of the silver coupe, hands behind his back, watching for the friction points he expects at any handoff. A young associate drifts toward a new walk-in with a confident stride and no glance at the tablet. The general manager does not bark. He points once to the entrance station and raises his eyebrows. The associate recalibrates mid-step, pivots to the lead, and asks for the next slot. The course correction reads as clean, rather than theatrical. The CEO notes how quickly the impulse to triage by sight can be turned by a small cue that costs no pride. A light rain starts, a scatter at first, then a steady wash that beads on the glass. Two customers with paper folders stand at the threshold, unsure whether to step inside with water on their shoulders. The guard beats the impulse to posture by moving first and best. He opens the door wide, offers a towel with a practiced flick, then takes one of the umbrellas from a rack and shakes it out before walking them to the lounge. He says welcome, not wait. He chooses a tone that keeps their pace normal rather than apologetic. The CEO watches the small choreography and files it under phrases that did not need to be spoken to be heard. The clerk returns from the terminal with a printout of calls and bookings. She takes the entrance station for 5 minutes to train the inventory lead on how to bounce between queue and verification without losing eye contact. She practices reading names twice, once from the list, once back to the person, with a pause that lets them correct her without feeling like a correction. The lead stumbles on an accent mark and recovers. The recovery matters more than the stumble. The CEO catches the glance between them and sees the quiet agreement to fix it faster next time. Phones in the room tilt toward tasks instead of faces. A guest in a hoodie asks for a compact and is told plainly that appointments come first, but walk-ins can be placed in the queue with accurate estimates. The estimate proves accurate within 3 minutes. Another guest asks whether a test route includes a stretch of hill. The associate checks a printed map the clerk taped to the entrance desk 5 minutes ago. It does not, but a second route does, and it is offered without a sigh. These are not grand gestures, only the relief of rules applied in the same way twice. The general manager does what good managers do at their best. He moves through the floor as if checking light levels, asking 2 precise questions at each station and listening hard enough that people give real answers. He writes less now because his hands are needed to sign a configuration, to carry a set of keys, to point to a portion of the policy poster that is not just text but a promise made visible under pressure. He does not hover near the CEO, and that restraint reads as respect rather than distance. A familiar face reappears at the edge of the scene. A customer who had lifted a phone earlier lowers it and clears his throat. He asks, half joking, whether there will be a statement. The general manager chooses to answer with more than a line. He stands in a space that everyone can see and says what standards were breached and what will be done before the end of the week. He does not name the manager who was escorted away. He does not blame a single moment. He names the habit that allowed the moment to happen and the work that will make the habit harder to reach for. The room hears it and does not shift uncomfortably because the words land clean. The CEO catches the clerk's eye and asks for the entrance log with the timestamps of each handoff in the last 10 minutes. She hands him the sheet, and he reads it with the same focus he gave the spec placard. He points to 2 entries where greetings and verifications took more than 60 seconds and asks what slowed them. The inventory lead answers once with an honest fixable. He missed a tap and had to reload. The second time, the clerk notes that she chose to help a guest seat a stroller before opening the queue. The CEO nods. He says there are delays worth owning and delays worth burning down. Seating a child is the first kind. Ignoring a booking is the second. The rain deepens and then backs off. The guard closes the umbrellas with a neat twist and leaves them to drip in a corner the cleaning staff will not curse. The young associate who had almost intercepted a walk-in without checking the queue now walks a guest to the lounge and explains the order quietly enough that no one nearby feels second. He returns and tells the lead that the scanner at Bay 2 is lagging. Rather than wave it off, the lead writes it down because small text stumbles often become human shortcuts. The clerk schedules a service request without pausing the queue. The general manager returns to the desk where the CEO waits and does not ask, "How did we do?" because he can see enough to assess. He asks, "What did we miss?" The CEO answers with 3 items he could predict and 1 he could not. Predictable, he says, were the instinct to triage by sight, the friction at the accent mark, and the urge to move people out of frame when the room grows crowded. The unexpected was how fast the team adapted when the first cue came from a peer rather than from a boss. "Keep that channel open," he says. "It costs less than any training and buys more than most." He glances at the wall clock. The 10 minutes he promised are closing. He thanks the clerk again and the inventory lead by name. He tells the general manager that the plan outlined earlier is acceptable if it is executed with dates and names beside each piece. He asks for an email by end of day summarizing actions taken and scheduled. He does not ask for a discount or an upgrade. He only asks for fidelity to the diagram laid out in ink an hour ago. The general manager agrees, and the floor takes a breath that feels like a new baseline rather than a pause between scenes. The rain thins to a mist and leaves the front glass dotted with beads that slide in slow trails. The clerk finishes taping the second notice at the entrance and smooths the corners with the side of her hand. The inventory lead returns the tablet to its stand and wipes a damp sleeve against his collar, not from sweat, but from the walk to the door with an umbrella. The general manager checks the clock and nods to the team. The room's volume finds a level that is busy without scraping. The CEO watches the flow for another minute, then turns back to the counter where his card holder had sat earlier. He asks for a copy of the interim plan with boxes beside each item for who will own it and when. The clerk opens a blank document and begins typing while the general manager dictates. Entrance coverage every peak hour. Verification before redirection. Training blocks scheduled and confirmed. Language changes on signage and in scripts. Data pulls each Saturday to catch slippage. The guard steps into frame again with a small storage bin and sets it under the entrance table for umbrellas and towels, so the front does not look makeshift. The small bin reads like a decision, not a prop. A notification trembles the general manager's phone, and he glances down, then raises his eyes. "Regional wants a quick look," he says. He flips the device into speaker mode on low volume and describes what changed in the last 30 minutes. The regional voice is clipped, but not cold. They approve the leave for the manager, ask for statements by end of day, and request that training be opened to a nearby sister store that has had similar complaints. The clerk captures each line without pausing. The CEO listens and does not interject. When the call ends, the general manager remains in place a beat longer than habit would dictate, as if to signal that nothing is being passed off to a distant office. 2 customers who had come in during the storm finish their consult and leave with brochures. One turns back to the entrance and thanks the lead for saying lounge rather than outside. The thanks is quiet, not performative, and it lands like a soft stamp. The lead nods and reaches for the towel bin without looking down. The cadence of check and verify has started to feel lived rather than announced. The CEO asks to see one more piece of the machine. He wants a sample of the language given when appointments slip. The clerk does not search for a script. She says it from memory with an even tone that does not beg or bite. "We run a queue in the order booked. Your slot has moved by 8 minutes. Would you like coffee in the front lounge, or to reschedule with added time for your drive?" The wording is clean and precise. He asks what happens when the wait stretches past 15. She answers that they add a small service credit and log the adjustment so the gesture does not depend on who is asking. He nods. The consistency matters more than the number. A teenage boy and an older relative step in from the sidewalk. The boy's sleeve leaves a dark print on the door. He points at a hatchback on the far side and says a color name that is wrong by one shade. The associate who nearly cut the queue earlier catches himself and checks the tablet first. He welcomes them and enters the name the older relative says slowly. He repeats it back without flattening the cadence. The older man's shoulders settle a little. The CEO watches that tiny change and puts it in the category of improvements you cannot post to a wall but can sense in a room. The general manager asks if the CEO would consider a brief word to the team, not a speech, just a frame for the work. The CEO considers, then agrees, with a condition. He will not talk in the back office. He wants to say it on the floor where the error occurred. They gather without applause, by habit rather than ceremony. Guard at the edge, associates near the entrance, the clerk with her hands clasped to keep from fidgeting, the inventory lead folding a towel into smaller squares while he listens. The CEO keeps his hands open and at rest. He says that standards are most visible when the room is full and the clock is fast. He says that equal treatment is not a promise to remember, but a discipline to practice when the floor tilts. He names what went wrong without describing anyone's hair or jacket or shoes. He ends with a sentence that functions like a checklist. Verify before you redirect. Say the place you want someone to go, and if it rains, walk with them. There is no clapping. The words do not ask for it. The general manager thanks him, then thanks the team for adjusting midstream. He assigns coverage for the next hour and releases them back to work. The phones around the room rise for a second, as if to catch a quote, then reconsider. The clerk returns to the terminal and prints the one-page plan with names in ink beside each item. She hands it to the general manager, who signs it and writes the date and hour. He asks the guard to pin a copy behind the entrance station where only staff can see it, and to replace it each time they revise. The CEO checks his watch. The 10 minutes have stretched a little. He does not mind. He tucks the card holder back into his inner pocket and picks up the key fob, weighing it with a small roll in his palm. He tells the general manager that the store has moved from apology to adjustment, which is the only direction that compels him to keep talking. He asks for a printed quote on the coupe, not because a discount will redeem anything, but because numbers discipline the end of a conversation the way procedures discipline the middle. The general manager nods and directs the clerk to prepare a clean, no games sheet. She prints without drama, the paper sliding warm into her hand. The room does not crowd the moment. The air feels level again. The clerk lays a single sheet on the counter, numbers in clean columns, no mystery fees cramped into the margins. The general manager steps back so the figures have room to breathe. The CEO reads without hurry, base price, destination, documentation. A line for optional packages is marked with a neat dash rather than a stack of boxes. He asks one question at a time, point to point, the way a pilot runs a checklist. Warranty tiers. Lead time on the metallic paint he prefers. Whether the quoted rate holds if delivery slips past month end. The clerk answers crisply and looks him in the eye each time. When she doesn't know, she says so, and walks 3 steps to verify, instead of improvising. He circles a number with the tip of the pen, not to dramatize, just to anchor the conversation. He says transparent pricing lives in daylight, which means the same figure should appear in the email he receives, the sheet he signs, and the screen the clerk uses. The general manager replies that their system can generate a locked digital quote with a timestamp. He offers to send it before the hour turns. The CEO nods and asks for 2 additions. First, no add-ons will appear later unless he initials them. Second, if the store misses the agreed delivery window, the solution is not a shrug, but a specific concession spelled out now. The general manager writes the language by hand so it cannot hide behind a template, then asks the clerk to format it cleanly. A low murmur spreads from the entrance as a small group of afternoon walk-ins forms a loose queue. The inventory lead greets them with the same cadence he used earlier. Names first, verification second. A teenager in a varsity jacket presses his nose to the glass of a matte grey hood, then glances back at his father to see if touching is allowed. The guard notices and simply says, "Go ahead," softly enough to leave the moment unremarkable and better for it. The showroom feels like a place arranged for people, rather than an arena arranged for scenes. The CEO finishes the first pass through the quote and sets the pen down parallel to the sheet. He says, "Price matters," but he did not stay to haggle. He stayed to watch whether the store could turn a habit into a standard. He looks past the numbers to the people who moved the last 30 minutes. The clerk who said, "I don't know," and fixed it. The lead who caught himself and pivoted. The guard who carried umbrellas instead of a posture. He asks the general manager if the plan survives on a Thursday when a delivery truck is late and someone calls in sick. The general manager says yes because it does not depend on one person's mood. The entrance station, the queue check, the wording changes, and the training calendar are now assigned to roles, not personalities. He taps the signed one-pager as proof. The phone at the sales counter buzzes and falls quiet. The clerk returns with the revised quote and the digital lock on her screen. She reads the delivery clause back, so no one must infer. If the window slips more than 7 days due to the store, the concession is a free maintenance service and a loaner without mileage caps during the delay. The CEO signs that line alone and leaves the rest blank for the moment. He asks for the email copy to be sent to an address he dictates. The clerk types carefully, repeating the domain so the message doesn't disappear into a near match. A hush brushes the room when the corridor door opens. The manager who was escorted away appears for a breath, then stops on the threshold with the guard beside her. She holds a small box of desk items, nothing heavy. The general manager meets her halfway, voice low but audible enough to register respect. He confirms the status again: immediate leave pending review, HR to call this afternoon, staff badge to be turned in at the desk. She nods once, jaw tight, and exits down the side hall without looking at the floor. The guard does not touch her. The moment is neither paraded nor hidden. It simply happens where work happens, under the same lights that saw the beginning. The CEO does not comment. He signs nothing else yet. He asks for the training calendar's first session time and who will run it. The general manager names a morning 2 days from now, 80 minutes, led by him and a regional trainer, with the clerk co-facilitating the intake drill. He invites the CEO to attend as an observer if schedule allows. The CEO says he will not sit in the room, but he will read the materials and return unannounced in a month to watch the entrance station in motion. He prefers to see systems cold rather than staged. The general manager says good. Good keeps the floor honest. A child laughs near the front lounge when a toy car rolls off a brochure stack and clacks against the tile. The sound is ordinary and welcome. The inventory lead smiles with his mouth closed and slides the stack back into form. The rain has stopped. Sun pushes a thin bar through the glass and lands on the polished hood of the silver coupe, the same car that began this chain of decisions. The CEO picks up the key fob, weighs it, then sets it down again, a small choreography that tells the team he is not using the purchase to bless or punish. Standards are separate from the sale. He tells the general manager he will take the night to decide, because time mutes adrenaline and clarifies judgment. He gives a direct number in case the store needs to confirm anything about the paperwork language. He asks for the compliance email that will receive statements from the staff involved. The clerk writes it on the corner of the quote, and then sends it to his phone so there is no chance of transcription error. He thanks her by name once more. Names have been a through line. Who owns the door? Who pulls the log? Who makes the call when minutes matter? Before he steps away, the CEO turns to the entrance station and watches one more handoff. A guest in a faded jacket asks about a base model. The lead checks the queue, confirms a slot in 7 minutes, and offers the front lounge with coffee. He adds, without drama, that if the guest prefers to stand by the display, he will call his name from there. The words are plain, and they land like ballast. The CEO gives a small nod that only the clerk catches, then slips the card holder inside his jacket. The plan is inked. The quote is clean. The room feels level. He tells the general manager they can talk tomorrow at 10, and the showroom resumes its ordinary noise, finally earned. The general manager asks the clerk to forward the locked quote and the compliance address to his inbox, then steps aside to call HR with details that belong in files, not rumors. His voice is quiet, paced. He names times, actions, and the policy sections that apply. The inventory lead resumes the entrance station and finds a rhythm that lets him greet, verify, and make eye contact without staring at the tablet like a shield. The guard rotates to the far door for a sweep, then returns to the main entrance and adjusts the towel bin so drips won't spread across the floor. The showroom's noises printer feed, door sigh, low talk settle into a workable hum. The CEO stays at the counter, phone face down, not rushing the end. He asks the clerk to show him one thing he hasn't seen. What happens when the system flags a mismatch in the booking name and the caller ID? She pulls up a sample and walks through the steps. A second verification. A callback on the number on file. A note log so anyone else can see the reason a slot moved. He asks how often the note gets skipped. She says it used to be often, and it won't be anymore, because the entrance station now owns the log. He catches the ownership word and nods. A process sticks when somebody's name sits next to it. The regional number flashes back on the general manager's phone. He puts it on low speaker so no one has to guess at the content. Regional asks for a short written summary by close, a list of immediate corrections, and whether the store needs temporary staff while training ramps. The general manager declines the extra bodies for now and requests a trainer on site for the first 2 sessions. He adds that the new entrance protocol is live and stable. Regional says good, send the names on the one-pager, and closes with a reminder that what a camera sees is only one angle. The general manager answers that the other angles will be documented, and the call ends with no drama. A guest at the lounge asks for directions to the restrooms. The young associate who had nearly cut the queue earlier walks the guest halfway, then points the rest of the route to keep the entrance clear. On his way back, he straightens 2 chairs that had drifted out of alignment. He catches the CEO's glance and returns it steadily, not seeking approval, just showing he's understood the flaw. At the door, a breeze slips through when a delivery driver leans on the handle with a hip. The guard adjusts the stop so the glass doesn't shudder against the frame. The clerk prints the email copy of the quote and slides it across for the CEO to confirm spelling on the address. He reads the line carefully, then taps the phone and watches the message arrive. He opens the PDF, checks the clause language, and saves it. He thanks her by name. The general manager returns from the HR call with a face that is neither triumphant nor sour. It is businesslike, which is the point. He says the review begins formally at 3, that statements will be taken in the small conference room, and that the floor will run on the new coverage without exception. A brief lull opens, and the general manager takes it to ask the CEO a question he could have saved. Is there anything you would tell a store that thinks it is fair until a day like this proves otherwise? The CEO considers and answers without preamble. Stop using fairness as a claim. Treat it as a measurement. Decide where you will check it every day and who writes it down when it slips. Do not wait for a complaint. Read your own logs and retire any phrase that moves a person out of frame. He pauses, then adds that a good rule is to put your most experienced person at the door when the floor is busiest, and to rotate the role so no one treats it as exile. The general manager writes the last line on the margin of the one-pager and underlines it once. He does not say thank you immediately because it would sound neat. He just breathes and looks at the entrance and the people working there. The clerk steps away to help a new arrival scan a QR code for accessories without pulling her from the queue. The inventory lead checks a name's spelling twice and smiles when the guest corrects him. He repeats it properly, and the guest's shoulders drop a notch. The CEO pockets the card holder and taps his phone back to sleep. He tells the general manager he will leave in a moment and that he will answer a call at 10 tomorrow as promised. He adds a small, practical request. Send him the training outline by 9. Not polished, just real, so he can read the bones before they start. The general manager agrees. The clerk sets a printed outline draft on the corner of the counter as a starting point and writes an asterisk next to sections that still need work. Intake triage, verification scripts, language swaps, role flips, debrief with peer scoring. The CEO touches the page with one finger, as if testing the grain of wood, and says the order looks right. Near the entrance, a father and daughter step in from the street. The girl wears a school jacket still damp at the cuffs. The lead greets them, checks the queue, and offers options without turning them into a problem. The girl asks if she can sit in the base model while they wait, and he says yes. I'll call from here when your slot opens. No one says outside. No one gestures toward glass for the sake of clearing space. The small change is not a speech, it is a path. The CEO extends his hand. The general manager takes it without squeezing too hard or too long. It is a handshake that closes a conversation without pretending it solved more than it did. The clerk meets the CEO's eye and says she will send the outline before 9. The guard gives a small nod that reads as acknowledgement rather than salute. The CEO turns toward the door, and the automatic panels separate with their soft inhalation. He steps into air that smells faintly of wet concrete and warmed metal, and the showroom sound softens behind him. Inside, the floor keeps moving on its new track. Outside, traffic noise lifts and recedes. He walks toward the curb with a pace that belongs to someone who is done with a room but not finished with the work. Late afternoon light flattens against the showroom glass and turns the chrome into soft bands. The door closes behind the CEO and the room exhales, not in relief, more like a runner settling into stride after a hill. The general manager pockets his phone and walks to the small conference room with 2 legal pads and a pitcher of water. He leaves the door open. Statements are taken on the hour. The guard plugs a drive into the security system and begins a clean export with timestamps, labeling clips by lane instead of by face. The inventory lead resets the entrance tablet and keeps the queue moving without asking for help. The habit feels a shade steadier now that it belongs to a station and not a person. The clerk prints the draft training outline and marks gaps in pencil. She writes the words "intake triage" at the top of the first page, and under it scribbles the exercises she wants to run. Roll flip with 3 scenarios. Appointments that slip by 10 minutes. Walk-ins with genuine urgency that do not fit the next slot. She writes verify before redirect in block letters and frames it with a box. She checks the time, saves the file, and emails the outline to the general manager and the regional trainer. The subject line is spare. Draft plan, live floor edits, welcomed. In the conference room, the general manager sits at an angle to the door so the witnesses can see the floor while they talk. He asks for plain sequences. He does not ask for adjectives. He asks for actions they took, words they chose, points where they felt a push to improvise. The associate who nearly intercepted the walk-in admits the pull of habit and the relief of a cue. The clerk describes the moment when she said, "I don't know," and decided that the entrance owns the log. The guard speaks to tone and posture, and why moving a person under rain toward glass can feel like control, even if the words are soft. Each sentence lands on paper with a scratch that the hallway can hear. It sounds like a store learning its own map. Regional replies to the outline with brief approval and a timestamp for a trainer to arrive at 8 the morning after next. The trainer will bring drills used at other sites and will watch the door for the first half hour rather than start with slides. The general manager forwards the note to the team and pins a copy above the entrance station where the towel bin sits beneath. The sign there now reads front lounge and the type matches the pricing cards. The small consistency tidies the message. At 3 sharp, HR dials in and the general manager closes the conference room door for the first time today. The process is precise, free of performance. Policy by number, conduct by example. The clerk sits in the hall and edits the language swaps for scripts, replacing phrases that move people out of frame with phrases that keep them in the scene. She makes a column labeled "if raining" and another labeled "if overcapacity." Her solutions are physical as much as verbal. Bring chairs from the back. Borrow 2 from service. Assign someone to carry a tray of water rather than point at a dispenser across the room. The floor keeps working. A couple arrives with a dog carrier, and the inventory lead finds a quiet corner near a sedan so they can wait without feeling tucked away. He marks the carrier as present in the queue, so he and the associate do not forget them when a louder request interrupts. A teenager asks about financing, and the associate walks him through ranges without talking down. The guard nods to a cleaner and points to a damp patch by the threshold. The cleaner glides a dry mop over it before anyone can slip. Outside, the wet pavement begins to show tire dust as traffic returns to normal. Inside, the printer feeds a fresh stack of brochures. The general manager emerges from the conference room after HR wraps and stops by the entrance station to stand beside the lead for 2 cycles. He does not correct. He observes, then asks a gentle question that exposes a small skip. They adjust. He thanks the lead and moves on. He reads the draft outline on his phone while walking and taps a note beneath the section on debriefs. Let peers speak first, then managers. He underlines it with his thumb on the glass. At 8 minutes before 9, the clerk sends the training outline to the CEO with the promised attachments. She does not dress it up with a paragraph about how hard the day felt. She writes the parts that are real now, the parts scheduled, and the names beside each. The email pings sent, and she presses the heel of her hand to her sternum for a second, as if a tightness there needed smoothing. She opens the queue, checks the count, and sets the timer for the next peak, so the entrance shift can rotate without drift. The general manager gathers the team for a short huddle before the late rush. He does not issue a speech. He repeats the 3 sentences the CEO left them with. Verify before you redirect. Say the place you want someone to go. If it rains, walk with them. He adds his own 4th. When you do not know, choose the action that keeps a person visible. The words do not hang as motto. They land as steps that can be taken by anyone, tired or not. Phones that had chased drama earlier now flicker for practical uses. A guest checks a map. A teenager films a short clip of a turn signal animation. A father sends a picture of the back seat to a mother deciding between trims. The room's angle is different. Not calmer, exactly, clearer. The guard leans against the side wall for the first time all day and allows himself a slow breath that does not need to be hidden. The clerk tucks a stray hair behind her ear and catches herself before she writes a line that sounds like marketing. She rewrites it until it sounds like a person talking to a person. As the sun thins, the silver coupe's hood picks up a final stripe of light and lets it fade. The general manager signs the training request for the sister store and schedules a follow-up call with regional for the next afternoon. He drafts the floor note for tomorrow morning, so he will not improvise at 8:59. He sends the HR packet and closes his laptop with a click that is not relief, but completion. The entrance station continues to greet and verify without looking down too long. The store feels less like a stage and more like a place built to do the same right thing twice. Evening settles in increments rather than a switch. Streetlights blink on outside the glass, and the showroom's reflections begin to read like a second room layered over the first. The general manager posts a small whiteboard at the entrance station that lists the next day's coverage in tidy rose names beside half-hour blocks, a checkbox next to verify, before redirect that someone can physically mark each cycle. The inventory lead draws a thin line under the last slot and writes, in plain caps, rotate. He caps the marker and leaves it in a shallow tray, so no one has to fish for it when the pace climbs. The clerk builds the training deck without slides full of slogans. Each screen carries a single step, a short clip, and a prompt. She imports the security footage of the entrance station after the changeover and trims 2 sequences to show good handoffs under noise. No arrows, no slow motion, just real time with captions. Name, then cue. Repeat the slot. Offer place, not exile. She writes a 1-page handout for role flips. Staff play guest and guest plays staff for 2 passes, with a peer scoring strip on the margin. She prints a stack and numbers them so none go missing. In the small conference room, the guard finishes labeling the exported clips and tucks the drive into a padded envelope with a form that lists start and end times precisely. He leaves it on the general manager's chair and returns to walk the floor once more, eyes at ankle level for hazards the rest of the room has stopped seeing. He pauses at the doorstop, adjusts it a notch so the glass won't chatter in a gust, and moves on. The general manager drafts a short note to send to the entire staff before dawn. It contains 4 parts: what happened, what is changing now, what will be trained within 48 hours, and how success will be measured weekly, without waiting for complaints. He reads it out loud to himself in the empty conference room. When a sentence sounds like a press release, he deletes it and writes what he would say to someone leaning on a counter at 5 minutes to close. He schedules the email for 6:45 a.m., saves the draft, and closes the window. Outside the store, the air is clean after rain. In another part of the city, the CEO sits at a small table by a window and opens the message the clerk sent earlier. The outline is bare of decoration blocks, drills, names, times. He reads it once, then again, and adds 3 comments in the margins that ask for specifics rather than style. Quantify handoff time target, log slips with reason code, rotate senior at door during predicted surges. He doesn't ask for more apology. He asks for receipts of change. He hits send and sets a reminder for the morning call. Back at the showroom, an older couple walks in near closing, apologizing for the hour. The entrance station still runs. Name, queue, options. The lead offers the front lounge and, because it is late, adds a seat at the desk nearest the heater without making it sound special or stingy. The woman smiles and says she can wait by the hatchback she came to see. He nods and writes their names in the slot rather than trusting memory. He brings a towel for the man's damp cap, a small domestic gesture that reads more clearly than another sentence could. The clerk finishes the deck and exports a PDF to avoid version surprises on different screens. She tests the HDMI cable in the conference room and leaves it coiled neatly under the monitor. On her way out, she pauses at the policy poster that started as wall dressing this morning and now feels like a mirror that can be checked against. She does not take a photo. She adjusts one corner where the frame sits a hair low and steps back until it is level. The general manager calls the regional trainer to confirm the plan and adds a detail. They'll open the session with a 1-minute clip from today's corrected handoff, not from the incident. He wants the room to see the behavior to chase, not the mistake to relive. The trainer agrees and says he'll arrive early to watch the door before anyone sits down. They hang up with no ceremony. At the counter, a quiet ping announces an email. The clerk reads the CEO's comments, adds the metrics to the outline in brackets, and updates the handout so the peer scoring strip includes a line for "Did we say where to go?" and another for "Did we walk with?" She sends the revision back with a note that she will print fresh copies at opening. Her message is 3 sentences long and contains 0 adjectives. Closing time slides into the room without a bell. The inventory lead takes the last 2 handoffs, then flips the entrance tablet to its night screen. He wipes the surface with a lint cloth and clicks the stand into a lock so no one can bump it off-center during cleaning. The guard does one last slow walk, stopping to coil a stray cable under the sales counter and to move a bucket so no one shoulders it in the dark. The general manager does not rush to the door. He circles once, eyes on the stations that will matter in the morning. He turns off the outer row of lights and leaves a slim band over the entrance station. Not theatrical, just a practical cue for the opening shift. He thanks the clerk and the lead by name and tells them not to arrive before their time. The trainer and he will open the floor. The clerk gathers her bag, checks her phone for the scheduled email to the CEO at 9 with the finalized deck, and slips out with a small wave. In the quiet that follows, the general manager writes 3 words on the whiteboard in a corner only staff will see. Visible, measured, repeatable. He does not underline them. He shuts down his monitor, tucks the padded envelope with the drive into a locked drawer for the night, and sets the alarm on his way out. The glass doors slide shut and reflect the room back on itself, tidy and ready. Across town, the CEO closes his laptop and sets the card holder on top of it. He does not count the day as a win. He counts it as proof that a sequence can be changed in the open, with names on each block instead of slogans floating above them. He sets his phone alarm for the 10 o'clock call, and lays a folded sheet on the table with 3 lines he will check tomorrow. Entrance coverage, running on time, training started on schedule, language swaps posted where mouths read them, the city's noise rounds off to a low wash, the work shrinks to a list that will either be done or not. He clicks the light and leaves the room in order. Morning arrives clean and ordinary. The store opens before traffic builds, and the general manager unlocks the glass with the trainer beside him. They run the lights in zones rather than flooding the room, queuing the stations that matter first. The entrance tablet wakes with the booking queue already live. The whiteboard shows coverage blocks with names inked beside each half hour. The trainer watches the door for 3 minutes without speaking, recording timestamps on a small notepad. He nods once, satisfied to begin with reality. Staff gather in the conference room with coffee cups and a few underlined handouts. The clerk connects the cable and brings up the deck that speaks in single steps rather than slogans. The first clip rolls in real time. A greeting with names, a cue check, a repeat of the slot, a clear offer of place. The trainer asks what went right before he asks what could be cleaner. The clerk runs the first drill and flips the roles. The inventory lead plays a nervous guest while a junior associate runs the station. The room laughs once at an awkward silence, then tries again. The second pass is smoother. Peer scoring strips fill with marks and short notes that sound like colleagues helping each other rather than judges grading a test. They work through intake triage, then verification before redirect, then language swaps that keep people visible. The trainer times each handoff and sets a target of under 60 seconds for greeting and verify. Under 1, 20 for greet, verify, and options given. The guard contributes a piece that only he would notice, where to stand at the door so a body reads as help rather than barrier. The general manager does not dominate the room. He writes on a flanking sheet, circles 3 friction points, and assigns owners with due times that morning. The clerk adds a column for reason codes when slips occur, so the log reads like a map rather than a diary. At 9 sharp, the clerk emails the revised deck and the 1-pager with names to the CEO. The subject line is simple and dated. The trainer ends the session by handing the pen to the entrance lead. He recaps the target in his own words and sets the rotation. They return to the floor without a salute. The door opens to the first wave, and the station runs. A guest with a walker arrives. The lead steps out from behind the stand and walks at the guest's pace to a seat by the heater. Another guest arrives during the handoff, and an associate slides into the station, reads the names on the tablet, and keeps the flow. The first cycle sticks. At 10, the general manager takes the call on speaker at the standing desk near the policy poster. The CEO's voice is level and warmed by a trace of sleep rubbed out. He says he received the deck, the handouts, and the updates with names. He asks what time training started and who ran each block. The general manager answers with times and names, rather than adjectives. He reports the first 2 handoffs of the day and their durations. He states one slip caused by a scanner lag and the handwritten backup used until service clears it. The CEO asks to hear the 3 items circled on the flanking sheet. The general manager reads them and the owners. He can hear paper moving, pens scratching. It is an audit, not a performance. The CEO asks for one more proof while they talk. He wants to listen to a live handoff without the room bending to the call. The general manager places the phone on the counter and steps aside. The room carries the sound cleanly. A guest gives a name. The lead repeats it correctly, checks the queue, states the slot, and offers the front lounge, or to stand by the hatchback. The guest chooses the car. The lead says, "I will call you from here." The exchange takes under 50 seconds. The CEO asks for the timestamp. The clerk reads it out. The trainer jots it into his notes. The decision lands without suspense because the work has removed the need for it. The CEO says the store moved a sequence from apology to procedure in less than a day and wrote names beside each block. He will proceed with the purchase on the quote terms and expects the same discipline on delivery. He also says he will return unannounced within a month to stand at the door and watch 2 cycles. He asks for the training calendar to be shared with the sister store and for a brief weekly metric emailed Friday afternoons for 6 weeks. The general manager agrees and thanks him without dusting the words with flourish. Paperwork resumes where it paused. The clerk prints the purchase documents without a shadow fee. The general manager initials the concession clause and the delivery window in his neat hand. The trainer books the follow-up session for the other store. The guard moves 2 chairs to widen a lane near the door and places the towel bin where it can be reached without a step back. The inventory lead updates the whiteboard by erasing a name and writing another for the next rotation. The pen squeaks once and is quiet. The CEO arrives late morning to sign. He reads each line, matches each number to the PDF on his phone, and writes his name once where it matters rather than scattering it across boxes. He thanks the clerk for the outline and the trainer for the timing. He shakes the general manager's hand and does not hold it too long. He does not make a speech. He looks at the entrance station for a final moment and sees a guest arrive to be greeted by name and by place, rather than by a gesture toward glass. He gives the smallest nod, more to himself than to anyone, and steps back into the city's light. The showroom returns to work. Not perfect, and not fragile. A station runs with a target and a log. A training block is scheduled with names. A phrase has been retired and replaced with one that keeps people inside the frame. The silver coupe waits for delivery on a date written in ink. The day continues in the way good change continues, not with noise, but with repetition that holds even when no one is watching.